what's acceptable and not acceptable. The Army has made a decision that bases across America, which have always been known, people know Fort Benning, people know Fort Bragg, people know Fort Hood, they must be renamed. We can't get enough recruits in the military, and we can't seem to win any wars, but we really got to rename these bases. So what you're looking at on your screen is the proposed plan from the Department of Defense of 9 Army posts to be renamed. Fort Benning, no more. Now Fort Moore. We'll have to learn who Moore is. After we learn who Benning was, because I served there for years and was back there multiple times, not for years, but multiple times. Never knew who General Benning was, but it was just Fort Benning. Fort Bragg, Fort Rucker, Fort Polk, Fort Hood. I know a lot of our audience has likely spent a lot of time in and around these places, which if my son goes on to serve, let's say he goes into the infantry, I'm going to say, hey, you going to Fort Benning? He's going to say, no, Fort Moore. There's a generational disconnect that's going to start to happen inside families. You know, vets, I met, World War II guys, where'd you serve? I was at Fort Hood. I was at Fort Benning. Now it's going to be, I'm at Fort Gregor Adams or Fort Walker. What are you talking about? Where? Oh, you mean Fort Bragg? Oh, okay. Well, pretty soon that residual goes away as well. So we're not connecting to our past. That's not to defend the Confederacy. That's not what any of this is about. It's about connecting to our past, even if flawed.
It's also a question, as Rachel's pointed out this morning, of priorities and where our military is focused in not just any given moment in history, but a pretty big one. Yeah. When we're talking about, by our president's own words, what was it? Nuclear Armageddon?
Yeah. Armageddon.
I mean, that's the words of President Joe Biden. So you'd like to think we're on point and our priorities are aligned and they are in order. And instead, what you have is the renaming of all these military bases to this cost, by the way, to this devotion of resources. $21 million to rename all these U.S. Army bases, to include all military bases, $62.5 million in the renaming effort.
I mean, I think if you put that on a bill, and you ask the American people to, just poll them, do you think this is worth $62 million right now, when our economy is tanking, when so many people are behind on their electric bills and their utility bills, 20 million Americans, when parents don't know how to put food on the table? When we left millions, maybe billions of dollars of weapons in Afghanistan to begin with, not to mention the priceless lives that were left. This is the priority of Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin at this moment, when just yesterday or just this past week, our president said we might be, in a new nuclear situation with the Soviet Union. It's outrageous.
Yeah, this guy couldn't lead his way out of a paper bag. He could not lead his way out of a paper bag. He's our Secretary of Defense.
It's embarrassing.
We're losing wars. We're embarrassed in Afghanistan. He wasn't fired. Nobody underneath him was fired for that debacle. And now here we are, not just renaming bases, but we can't even fill the ranks to go to Fort Liberty, formerly known as Fort Bragg. Here is the shortfalls in recruiting in our military as well. So the U.S. Army fell 15,000 soldiers short of their recruiting goal. That's a division that they can't staff with new privates.
Wow.
The National Guard lost 7,500 service members, not to mention people pushed out because of COVID vaccines. Now, the Navy and Marine Corps and Air Force, that is about next year. Usually they're way ahead of their goal even when the year begins, because they've already got recruits stacked to come in for that fiscal year. Marine Corps usually is almost fully staffed by now. They've only met 30% of the goal, Air Force and Navy 10%. So they're already behind their recruiting goals for next year. And somehow sending them to Fort Liberty instead of Fort Bragg is going to solve our problems.
The three of us talked about this a little bit earlier in the show. We talked about what could contribute to this. You both forwarded the idea that, look, if it's an extension of go woke, go broke, the type of individuals that want to go into the United States military aren't the type of individuals that want that to be like every other aspect of society. You both had that. I wondered aloud whether or not it's part of a larger cultural shift of just delaying adulthood, and people don't get jobs as early as they did. They don't move out of home as early as they did, and maybe they're not signing up. There's something else. You know what makes us very unique is that we have an all-volunteer military. We don't have a draft. What that means is you have to have a population of people dedicated to the belief in the United States of America who say, I love this and this is worth sacrifice. And that's why this is concerning to me. If there are fewer people willing to sign up, is that not by extension say, right now we have not just a deficit of military members, do we have a deficit of patriotism?
You are right over the target.
Of course we do. I mean, you tell kids from the moment they enter school that their country is bad, of course they're not going to learn to love your country. We've talked about this before, Pete, in parenting. Initially you're child's experience with you is you want them to, they need to love you and be bonded to you first. And then as they get older and they, go into high school and college and beyond, they start to see your flaws, right? And they can start to analyze, what's good and what's bad and what mom and dad did well and what they didn't do well. But the first step is love and bonding to the parent. And it's the same thing with the country. From a very, very young age, from preschool, all the way through high school, kids are being told that this is a terrible, racist country, and no wonder our recruitment is down.
It is a national security threat. It's why our education system is the root cause, if you want to, of that national security threat. If you don't have patriots, then you're not going to have privates. You're just not, because otherwise they can go to community college, they can get another trade, a different skill, do something else honorable when the military's totally lost its way. It's scary.
Yeah, it is.
Did you just make that up? That was a really good line.